He's doubling down on what he said just a few days ago, calling for an end to due process when it comes to immigration, seemingly ignorant of the fact that many of the folks who are coming to this country are in fact seeking asylum, which they are allowed to do. Actor and activist George Takei has compared the administration's separation policy to Japanese internment camps, Japanese-American internment camps, I should say. He has written about being sent to a camp at 5 years old for foreign policy, and George joins me now. I'm sorry for the misappellation of your last name just a few moments ago, George, but take us back to 1941. People are drawing this parallel. How salient is that? Is that a parallel that you're making as well?
Absolutely. As a Japanese American who grew up behind the barbed wire fences of American internment camps, they were American internment camps here in the United States for American citizens of Japanese ancestry. It really roused me every time they refer to Japanese internment camps, because Japanese internment camps were run by the government of Japan. We are Americans, and back then in 1942, they incarcerated American citizens behind American barbed wire fences. And when I heard about this current Supreme Court validating Donald Trump's Muslim travel ban, I think I almost understood the chill that a Muslim must have felt, because the parallels are really cold and chilling. We were innocent American citizens who, simply because we looked like the people that bombed Pearl Harbor, were imprisoned. And here, you know, we were painted with a broad brush as potential saboteurs, as spies, as fifth columnists. And now, with that same broad brush, we're characterizing all Muslims coming from those 5 countries that were named, and North Korea and Venezuela, as all potential terrorists. Broad brush, mass characterization. That is not the way it should be done, but that's the way it was done to us. And Donald Trump is now trying to repeat that again. And then, in the same action, this Supreme Court overturned the Korematsu Supreme Court ruling of 1944, when with that Korematsu ruling, justified our incarceration. And the Chief Justice Roberts called that a grave wrong. Well, this is a Muslim travel ban, too, is a grave wrong in the same sense. And yet they approve that while overturning the Korematsu, as if it's a sardonic mockery of what they're doing.
I want to ask you to interrupt here just a little bit about that. If you read the dissent from Justice Sotomayor, she takes issue with those who say don't consider Korematsu in this case when you talk about the travel ban, as Justice Roberts did. He was heralding the fact that it had finally been that had besmirched this court, and the court, as he saw it, was moving on from it. It's not lost on me that at the same time that's happening, you have these 2,047 children who are separated from their parents in captivity.
That's right. This is the Latino children, and separating families is not American, and then incarcerating the babies is offensively un-American, and to bring those babies or 3-year-olds to trial without their parents is absolutely insane. The echoes of the past, because when we were incarcerated, they raided orphanages and gathered all Japanese American babies, some that were half Japanese, and put them in the Manzanar camp, which had an orphanage. This thing is all irrational and hysterical, ginned up by the hysteria of the times. And this Muslim travel ban that was validated by this Supreme Court will be, with some future Supreme Court, will be overturned.
George, last question here. I've talked to doctors, I've talked to folks who've said there are going to be long-term physical and psychological effects on these children who have been separated from their parents. And again, you were there in 1941. A lot of time has elapsed since then. Help me understand the long-term effects of internment of the kind that you experienced.
Well, in our case, our families were not split apart. we always had the families intact. I remember it was my parents that was my rock, my pillar. And as long as you have loving parents with you, it mitigates the incarceration. These children are being torn away from their parents. I mean, babies, infants taken away, months-old infants taken away from them. That will have a profound traumatizing effect on them. And you know, we are better than that. We as Americans, I was listening to another speaker, Senator Harris, saying that we are better than that, and we are. And we have learned the lesson of our incarceration in 1942, because when the first Muslim travel ban was signed by Donald Trump, tens of thousands of Americans all across the country rushed to the airports to protest that. Attorneys went to the airports to offer a pro bono service to the new arrivals. And the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, Sally Yates, said, "This is unconstitutional. I will not defend it." So we are better Americans, and we have learned from the past. It's just that the highest institution of our democracy, from the presidency to the Supreme Court, is blind and deaf, tone deaf to the lessons of history.
George.
It is really chilling.
Thank you very much for the time. George Takei there, actor and activist, joining me this afternoon. Thank you very much for the time, and we're going to continue to